Okay, I think we're live. So,
Okie
welcome to
day.
another Random Musings. Welcome to Abraham, Roger, and Mark. Or
I am
OSR.
here to kill commie orcs. I have not said anything about killing commies, just orcs.
Just orcs. That are
Don't
commie.
don't
At
don't ban us. It's commie orcs. Um
It's a
it
new
can be
fantasy
bad.
species.
There's not really a
yeah.
problem.
Can you call them quarks? Quarks are fine.
No, I just call them commies. So the preferred dwarven method is you load them onto a helicopter and you drive out over the Atlantic. We have a list. Anyway,
Okay, so first thing I'm going to announce something that I've already mentioned on social media. There will be a promo going on throughout the rest of the month. It's the end of the year and the end of the Red Room Store promo. If you use promo code the end when you are checking out of the store, you will have a 50% discount on all Red Room products. Only the Red Room products, not the Pandit files. So this will be until the 31st. The second announcement is about something that Abram is going to do next. He's going to do a series of videos about solo role-playing game with Red Games, and I'll let him explain exactly what it is because he's the one doing it, not me. So Abram, go on.
Yeah, no, I'm very excited because sometimes people could be wondering how easy it is to solo the many tabletop RPGs that are sold in the Red Room Publishing store. Pretty much all of them. And it is because of the excellent tables provided in the character creation process that the creative juices already start to flow. I was just telling Miguel. So I was just, well, I'm going to do the first video, like a simple 10, 15-minute video explaining how to create a character. And I ended up doing a 39-minute video because I became fascinated with all of the solo possibilities. Because for those of you that do not know, character creation process in the Red Room Publishing, in the Red role-playing game, is super simple. 7 steps. So first, I started to roll for the attributes, right? I went old school. 3 6-sided dice, and in order. Not choosing like this in this stat, this in this other attribute. No, I let the dice fall where they may. And I wanted the dice to inspire me. And I started to end up with a character that was pretty strong. But that was pretty much it. He was strength 14, toughness 13. But the other attributes were pretty low. Not negative modifier, but unremarkable. So I started to think, well, I see this guy that perhaps started to bulk up a bit because for whatever reason, he needed the extra strength and didn't pay too much attention to the other attributes. But then I went to step 2 of the character creation process, determining origin and life path. And I was curious. I was like, oh, well, let's see. I made the rolls. Wealthy. Turns out he was a doctor. And I was like, how could he be a doctor? His intelligence is so low. He has 11 intelligence. So I kept rolling.
It happens.
Yeah. I kept rolling. But then I got a boost to charisma. So I thought that's how he became very well known as a doctor. He knew who to talk to, what sort of social circles to move in. But it turns out that he was so busy trying to promote his image of a great doctor, he didn't pay attention to his beloved, to his betrothed, and she disappeared. It is a mystery. That's the first mystery that I encountered. His wife-to-be vanished. No idea how it happened, who did it, why. And he became depressed. That's also a result of the tables. Drawback, depression. Because he actually is depressed for something very important. He's not depressed because he didn't get the last gluten-free muffin at the Starbucks. He's depressed because he lost the love of his life. So now he abandoned his medical career and decided to become a private eye. not only to obtain experience and solve cases to make a living, but also to eventually become skilled enough to find out what happened to his betrothed. So I got a bonus to investigation, but during the character creation process, I'm getting ahead of myself because next we have step 3. The archetype was private investigator, private eye. I got my unique fit, which is really good at carrying out investigations. The the free perk I chose gunslinger because he said to practice a bit with the gun just in case, but he's not very dexterous. He did go to the gym and got a bit strong in case he has to defend himself. But now we have a farmer doctor turned into a private investigator that is depressed because his betrothed vanished. Then I started to distribute the skill points, mostly focusing on investigation, urban savvy, stealth, things of the trade. But when it comes to the additional perk, optional perk, I got gunslinger to at the very least be somewhat passable, decent in case of a gunfight. But I needed to choose a drawback, and I decided this guy, he had his career going, not very very skilled in the medical field, but because of his charisma, he was going up, going places, and then somebody did something to the love of his life. So now he has all of this pent up rage. He's like a volcano waiting to burst. And I took the drawback of homicidal maniac. Homicidal mania. So every time he fights someone that opposes him, he needs to make a check because otherwise he wants to, YouTube friendly term, unalive the individual. So I ended up with this very interesting character. Later on in I calculated my health points. I purchased my starting gear and ended up with the farmer doctor turned into a private eye to find out what happened to the love of his life. And he has this horrible rage within him. And yeah, he sometimes gets depressed because of it. Very interesting starting point for the solo campaign, don't you think?
Do you know what style you're going to play? That sounds like a thriller or a horror game.
That's the cool thing about solo games. You can decide to set the style from the very start, or you can let things take you wherever. For all that I know, she could have been taken by some sort of supernatural force, or maybe something very mundane. She got in trouble with some sort of crime boss, crime lord, or whatever, and they took her for whatever. Or maybe she suffered some accident and it's unrelated, and I'm going to be taking on an adventure that is very different from that initial premise. And the solo roleplay process is going to lead us into who knows which direction.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'll have to check it out when it starts. When it's going to be aired?
Tomorrow. That's the first video, because as I told you, I have an entire series. The next video is going to be the first adventure. Let's see where things go.
We need to let Jack McCarthy know about that, because as you know, he's a big fanatic about solo gaming.
Now, do you use? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I'm going to mention it to Jack because he'll want to watch.
Abraham, do you have any type of Oracle thing that you will use with it? You know, to dictate how things progress, or?
I'm still deciding because I have so many. Throughout the years, I have purchased a lot of them, but I also have received them as review gifts, otherwise review copies, otherwise others as gifts. But I think I'm going to go with the this free Game Master emulator, TriCube Tales. It's called the TriCube Tales Game Master emulator, and it is free. You can get it from DriveThru RPG. TriCube Tales. It's very simple. It gives you a way to generate the starting scene, and then things proceed from there, just making the rolls. You come up with some prompts and just go with the first thing that comes to your mind. Let's say that I got the scene of drinking in a cafe, but then I make some rolls and I obtain something like violence, unexpected terror. So maybe I think in the middle of his drink, of his drinking his coffee or whatever, terrorists decide to attack the cafe. Why? It makes you think, is it related to the disappearance of his wife to be? Could she have gotten? Maybe she was a spy. For all he knows, she could have been some sort of spy, and now it's some sort of international affair. And so you deal with the situation. The enemies appear. You make your rolls to see what attacks they are going to do. If you survive, you make the next roll. You obtain your prompts, and based on the words that you obtain, the adventure proceeds in a different situation. Maybe you obtain something that makes you think of vehicles and haste. So maybe you need to make a quick escape because more vehicles are arriving with more terrorists to attack the establishment or where the building where you are.
The concept sounds interesting, but I haven't watched any of your solo games videos. I guess I'll have to watch some of those.
Yeah,
Try
the
to
problem with solo
how
games.
that works, because it seems to be a bit, well, obviously a bit different because you're game mastering yourself in a way, right?
That's the problem with most solo games, and particularly solo instructional books or videos. They don't tell you how to do, like, they give you so many tools, but they don't give you an exact process. There are exceptions, of course, like the Mythic Game Master Emulator second edition. That's what started it all. The Mythic Game Master Emulator first edition like got the ball rolling, but the roleplay explanations were terrible because it's obvious that the author, and I've said it to the author, I have contacted the author, and they, because I think it's a he, she, because first I saw the name and it was a male name, and then it was a female name. So I don't know what they are considering themselves, but well, the author, um, like he didn't complain about the oh yeah, no, you're wrong, and the author has never really role played in tabletop RPGs. Every single session has been like a conversation of asking questions. So can I see something in the distance? Is there something inside of the box? Is there something that I can use? You're talking to the game master to like a conversation about the game, but that actually sparked the idea of solo role playing because he handles this system of asking questions. Do I see something in the distance? Is there something under the sheet? So you supposedly ask those questions and you make the roll to obtain a yes or no answer. Or in some cases, you make rolls to generate various random prompts like verbs, objects, people, and you obtain the elements to determine what is going to happen next. But that's the thing that gets a lot of people bored. I knew this guy from a website. What was his name? Started with A, something from Traveler, Aramis, I think. And he said, what I don't like about solo roleplay is that I feel like I'm playing like a 20 questions game. But that's the thing. You don't really need to ask questions. You only need to roleplay. Like, if you want to know if there is something inside of the cabin, I open the door to the cabin and look inside. And then you make your roll. And you obtain yes.
Yeah.
There is something
So
inside.
it's very self-directed, and I have some of these things, and there's games that are self-contained. Like I can't think of the name, but there was a sci-fi one that was very like short and sweet. You're a bounty hunter, things along those lines. And the only problem with it is that some of these games are almost like journaling or something like that, where you have things like you said, tools to help you, but you're writing a story basically. So you have to interpret, what does this mean, or what can happen. So you're still kind of being your own GM. So I was kind of looking for things that maybe have mechanics to, offer random things where basically, puts those things in front of you, or gives you limits. I can't just say anything happens. Now I'm in a building. Okay, what could happen in this building? So like I spoke to Miguel. Like I was thinking of like doing like because like something that would fit with Grindhouse would be like a solo revenge game. Where you're one of these characters who, whether it was like someone who was abused terribly and left for dead, or you're like one of these Charles Bronson types who's a killer or something like that. And there's so many movies like that, and that lends itself great to a solo player experience, right? Because not every RPG is good for a party, a conventional party. Like, oh hey, we're going to the dungeon. There's a lot of things that you want it to work like a movie. You want to be, you know, uh, totally immersed in that world as a single person. So how can you make a game where you kind of have things going on that are fixed but variable? And like Judd talks about like the hex flower system, where you could have things going on, where you go from this hex to this hex, or you tackle things in levels. And I said, oh, that would be great for solo, because now you have a structure that's there already, with some leeway to it, and maybe they represent factions, like mob bosses, or creatures or something like that, but it gives you like set paths, like a choose your own adventure book, instead of just being like forcing someone to write a story, because everybody has their different strengths and weaknesses, and not everybody's willing to go to create a whole story. Maybe someone wants to solo, but they don't GM games, so the pressure is more on them to come up with anything, and they just want to play a game, almost like a video game. So I guess there's that element to it.
If you're playing a pure solo role playing game and you feel like you're writing a story, then you are doing it wrong, because there are storytelling RPG hybrid games. The Entity is a storytelling solo RPG game, and that is specifically made to write the story. But when it comes to solo role playing, you cannot decide what happens. If you
Yeah.
suddenly obtain the prompts of, maybe you are looking inside of a box and you obtain the results of doll, curse, page. Immediately, the first thing that comes to your mind, there is a doll with a page of a book that explains a curse that has been placed on the doll. But you cannot come up with something like, oh, inside of the box there is a gun and there are bullets, because that doesn't have anything to do with the
Yeah.
results. You have those limitations. You have to respect the limitations of the prompts. Otherwise, you're just writing whatever you like.
But do some of these things ever like kind of write you into a corner? Whereas like, if you're a conventional GM, you're like, okay, doll in a box, and there's a piece of parchment paper or something that describes this curse, but then you start thinking like, oh, well, who cursed the doll? What's the origins of the doll? And that might factor into the story. Whereas, if you don't have those tools, you might reach a dead end. Okay, doll box. Okay, what happens now? Is the doll going to attack me in my sleep? Or is it going to impart information from the netherworld, or what goes on here? So
As I always say, roleplay solves everything. That is up to you. What are you going to do with that doll, right? Are you going to touch it or no? Or I close the box and start looking through the internet for various websites that talk about curses. And then you make your rolls. And maybe you obtain the result of a website, lewd, puzzle. Turns out that you somehow by accident entered into one of those naughty sites, but you saw a puzzle made by a commenter in the forums that if supposedly if you solve this puzzle, you can obtain the answers and to many occult riddles. And so it's all about what are you going to do with the doll or with
mhm.
the parchment. So don't wait to, you never get into a corner, because there is something, always something that you can do. You can investigate this, you can talk with someone, you can take the doll and start chanting the curse, which would be very risky in my opinion. And based on the actions that you take, something is going to occur.
I think the people who really love solo games are big fans of like dungeon crawls, which is easy because all right, you're limited to a level, what monsters are popping up, and that can get kind of old after a while if there's no other interaction going on and stuff like that. I mean, it's fun. It's a fun exercise. Have something like a red room game where you have drama and intrigue, horror and things like that. Like you have a lot of options, so you want to be able to explore that, with a character, I guess. So I guess it would need a little bit more than what somebody might use just for a regular straight like D&D type crawl. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yes, that's why I recommend the TriCube Tales, the free emulator that I mentioned, because you have a way to generate complex prompts. You have this table with different like property, punishment, rivalry, barrier, betrayal, and you start to create those combinations of concepts, and you start to come up with those interpretations, and you cannot move outside of those prompts. You could even
mm,
do a combination of dungeon crawl with these more complex situations or nuances to the scene. So as you're moving through the corridor and you obtain a result, let's say destruction, vengeance. Suddenly, the wall to your right, if you want to determine the direction, roll a die. If you roll evens, it's to the right, odds to the left. The wall explodes. and you can hear a voice saying, "I will have my vengeance." And suddenly the dungeon crawl situation that is very standard, perhaps even potentially boring, now has an immediate danger that you need to deal with because of those results. And it could be
Yeah.
something else entirely. Maybe you obtain the result of singing behind, and you start to hear someone singing just behind you. You have just entered the dungeon, you went down the staircase, and you can hear singing just from outside. Could be anything. Could be a mysterious ghost that sings because it is in pain, or it could be a bard. Could be a bard outside. Maybe now we can get an ally. Go outside and see if it's a bard, and if he wants to join the adventure, or if he can provide some clues as to how to navigate the dungeon.
Do you ever find with these things that sometimes like you can interpret certain results, but do you find like it might give you something that's inappropriate, or that you can't work with, or that doesn't fit everything that came before?
I think it is important that is determined by the tables that you are using. There are tables that are specific to various genres. So if you use like a table with a lot of comedy results, like clowns and pie thrown into your face or something, and it's like a serious game, it won't be very useful. So it's a good idea to use the tables or the Game Master emulator that fits whatever you are going for. But like I said, it's also sometimes good to have surprises. Maybe you wanted to do a horror game and you obtain the result of clown and pies. Well, maybe it's a situation like it, right? It's up to you.
Mm.
Maybe like a clown similar to it appeared and he's throwing these pies that are actually, they are acid pies, and they slam into your face and your face melts.
Like the Joker?
Yeah, with
That's interesting. The concept, it's interesting. A bit strange.
I've never played a solo game and never done it successfully. I do have the Mythic Game Master Emulator Second Edition. I do have it sitting on my shelf. Every time I try to do it, doesn't quite work out for me. I don't know what it is, but whether I'm running the game or playing the game, I find the interaction with other people is essential to me. Otherwise, I can't seem to maintain my interest. It's like I might as well, fire up Baldur's Gate or some other CRPG and play that, because that too. Now, of course, it's rigid. You tend to have fixed storylines, although I think there's at least some games where it's a little flexible. But at the end of the day, it's the interaction with other people that makes the tabletop role-playing game interesting to me.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I agree with that. I
Yeah.
agree with.
I think that's a very important point, because in solo role-playing games, you are interacting with other aspects of yourself. Sounds a bit schizophrenic, but certainly you are talking with someone
multiple
that is.
personality. It will be very effective. Start
Mm.
talking to yourself and in different voices.
But it's all based on the interpretations. There are tables that give you the responses. Those responses could be hostile, could be friendly. Like you could describe, I approach the man with the dark cloak and brown shirt that is pointing a crossbow at me, and I tell him, "Listen, friend, I'm not here to get into a fight." This sounds like it will be a good opportunity to roll for a reaction, to see
Mhm.
maybe the guy immediately shoots you. Oh, tough luck, right? But maybe you need to handle things via some sort of check using one of your social skills. And then you roll some dice to see what he responds. Maybe you obtain the result of delay curious. The man that was pointing his crossbow at you delays in shooting at you as he promised a few moments ago, and expresses his curiosity about your purpose down in this oubliette. Things like that.
I just had an idea, like you remember the movie Mazes and Monsters with Tom Hanks, where he goes nutty because his brother passed, and he's stricken with grief, and he had some bad episodes with his previous RPG group, and then he becomes engrossed in the character and starts believing that he's the character. So it would be funny to do a take on that where the guy's playing like a solo game, and now his friends have to basically try to get inside of his head, to to see what he was thinking at the time and how does that correlate to the real world. But then maybe there's an extra added layer, like they have to actually go into his mind and now be inside of his game world in his head. Yeah.
In the case of Tom Hanks, it was more of a solo LARPing.
Yeah. I think it and it's funny because that movie was like one of these cautionary tales about like the satanic panic, and that made me want to play D&D more than ever. I was like, this is great. Not that I want, I mean, I love to this day, I still love, like going to caves, natural caverns and stuff like that. But, I didn't think to do that with props and stuff like that. But I think that was one of the first movies where I saw people playing the game, even though they're not really playing D&D and they don't have miniatures. They have these like little standees that they're painting. I was like, oh, this is great. Cause I had never really been exposed to that, so it's kind of funny. Like things like that got most of, people back then around my age into these things because we were curious about it. It seemed mysterious and cool and all this dragons and fantasy and all these other things involved in it. Um, I don't think people today, especially young people getting into the gaming, they have that same kind of entrance. They have bombarded by YouTube and all these other things and commercials and Polygon articles and Critical Role, and sometimes they're seeing the worst end of it. They're seeing like the overpopularized, sterilized, commercialized, homogenized, you know, um, ultra woke D&D, and they think like, oh, this is what it is, but it's, we had that element of mystery to it that, oh, this is great, and oh, I could find some people and make friends, and we're going to go on these adventures into these, caverns or mazes or whatever, and that was great. That's my early experiences with it, when we had the most fun with it, and I think a lot of it gets lost today because people really don't know what they're playing, and that's that falls heavily on the current owners of the the ampersand, the big name, but thankfully there's so many people and like the OSR and stuff like that who they get it, they know what it should be. It should be adventure, excitement, heroic deeds, or maybe not heroic, maybe you know grubby thieves, operating in darkness, whatever, but they have a handle on it better than the companies today who are kind of like pushing that overhyped, just watered down version of D&D and other RPGs.
It's like a lot of people in current times, they fear their imagination so much, but I think it could also be explained that imagination is also a muscle. If you don't exercise it, it's going to go down to shit. And you have
Definitely.
so many things that make it so easy for you. Like you have video games, you have movies, you have so many things, so many YouTube videos, TikTok, and they're all doing the work for you. All of the sound, the moving images,
Yeah.
they are doing everything for you. You don't
Legacy
have
media.
to put any effort. So a lot of them, they cannot tell the difference between a tabletop role playing game and a video game. They actually think it is the same thing. Like, oh well, I would rather just play a video game. But in a video game, you can just starting with the weapons, the spells, the skills, the powers. If it is not programmed in the game, you cannot do it. And moving away from that, the graphics, the sounds, they will never match what you can come up with. The moment you lose that vividness of coming up with so unimaginable vistas and sounds, that's when things become so boring in tabletop RPGs, because you're no longer letting your imagination become manifest. You're waiting for
Yeah.
something to give you that feedback.
Well, I've seen people now who like they'll take like one of these free league games like Alien and they'll only play the stock adventures and that's it. And they'll replay them or they'll go to a con and run them or play in them. And I'm like, well, why would you do that? Like, there's nothing wrong with trying those things, but like me personally, I hate to do anything stock. Like even if I use a public adventure, I'll change it up a little or try to inject some new ideas into it. But some people they only want like pre-published things that are easy to dive into. Everything is, all the answers and questions are right there for you. There's very little deviation. Same thing with like D&D products where they have like I forget what they call them, like not plot points, but like these story paths, where you jump from here to here to here, and then this happens, and it's very railroady. There's not
Well,
much agency, not many choices.
TOSR people don't really like to play pre-made adventures. The things we sell the less is always adventures.
Yeah.
Any scenario I published, it always sells less than the game.
But that speaks to your audience though, because I think you
Yeah,
have the people
it's
who
always hard. Yeah,
want to make. Yeah.
I don't know
As
if, and even when they buy the scenarios, I'm not sure if they play it or if they just take a look at it and take some ideas
yeah.
to introduce somewhere else. I have never seen, well, except those specific things like the giallos, which are a bit different than the rest, and Welcome to St. Cloud. The other ones that we published after that, I'm not sure if anyone play them, at least as they are.
Yeah.
As they
I know
were.
GMs who can only run published things. Especially for some reason, it seems mostly people who run Call of Cthulhu, whatever edition, a couple other games, like
Yeah,
those GMs
yeah.
like seem to gravitate towards, I have to have this thing that was printed, and and they really don't like to prep or not that you have to over prep everything, but they really don't like having to create anything. I mean, they're great at running it as it happens. When characters make
Mhm.
choices and stuff like that. So they're not that type of game masters, but a lot of times, as far as coming up with a complete scenario on their own, I don't know with those type of games if it's like the mythos and other things that kind of put them off, or they just like the convenience of having that pre-published adventure. I don't know, but
Well, Call of Cthulhu has all those things, the handouts for the players and all those things. And if
yeah,
you
that's
buy
helpful.
yeah, it's helpful. Maps and whatever. So
Yeah,
it kind of helps using. When I was running Call of Cthulhu, I actually used lots of, and they were good as well. So it's
yeah.
but
Some were good,
that's
except
also that the
yeah,
scenarios were good. If they were badly made, they would be not as useful. But the old ones and the first editions, I don't know what the guys are doing now in Chaosium. If their adventures are still good, probably not. I wouldn't bet
Some
on.
of them, not all of them. Some of them are pretty decent. Some others are lackluster. Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
I
think
think
the
now,
major problem is that it seems like there are two extremes. There are people that look at the adventure module and think, oh no, I'm going to have to read it all, and I'm going to have to memorize, and I'm going to learn. They have to learn all
Mhm.
the stats and how things are going to proceed, and they get like, oof, no. They feel a bit lazy about that. But there are
yeah,
some others that look at the adventure module and, oh no, no, I have to run it like this. I have to follow the structure. I cannot deviate if the players are attempting something else. No, no, no. I'm going to railroad them into the encounters as described in the adventure module. But it's not. It's a balance. You have the adventure module. You read it. If you want to ignore some of the things in the adventure module, ignore them. Some
yeah,
of the good adventure modules, they tell you you can do whatever you like with this. For example, I'm running a game for Miguel and his group called Divinity Lost, the Black Madonna. They give you so many sites all over the place: Berlin, Russia, etc., Moscow, and they tell you, well, here's a site, insert it in the adventure. However, it proceeds depending on the actions of the player characters. So you're not taking them into a very rigid path. If they decide to investigate this, then this occurs.
yeah.
If they
That's
decide
good.
to go other route,
But there were pretty bad scenarios for cult. Very extremely railroady. I remember the Judas Grail. That was
Mhm.
very hard to run unless you just modified it a lot because it was structured to be a railroad scenario. Just basically, you cannot do anything outside what was already determined.
The impression I had of Cult Divinity Lost is that that's the characteristic of the game as a whole. It was written by people who don't really understand tabletop
No,
RPGs, but they do understand narrative. It
yeah,
could also explain their choice of Powered by the Apocalypse as the underlying game system.
Yeah,
I tried their first adventure. I think I'm not sure if it was in the book or if it was a free scenario, but it was absolutely disgusting. Just and some of those short scenarios that they published in a
What edition of Cult?
anthology. Go on. What were you
The
saying, Pedro?
Cult Divinity Lost. It's the fourth edition.
the fourth edition. Ah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I have the I have it in hardback, and I freely admit I bought it in part because of the marketing and the production values associated with the book. Then I read through it and realized, oh, God, this is a dog's breakfast. They don't even know how to describe their own game properly.
Yeah, but I
Yeah,
was asking Miguel, what modules that is from this current edition or from the former editions?
yeah. When I started, I was talking about first edition.
First
So
edition. Okay.
I remember. So I mentioned Judas Grail, but it was not just that one. I remember that Fallen Angels wasn't bad. It was a story about a story. Well, it was a story, yes, but it could be played as an adventure um, with vampires and other things. But it described New York, several things about it. The main scenario was a bit railroady, but since it described other things around it, you could use it as an actual scenario. Now I've tried to run some of those things that they published, the first things they published for Divinity Lost, and they were pretty bad as well.
Because we have played the other one shot. The first one that we published. Do you remember when you had to go into this mansion that this influencer disappeared, where the only survivor was Sylvia at the end? And we
Yeah.
actually played with Mark. Uh-huh.
Yeah, I remember that. I played a private detective who unfortunately didn't figure out that he can't look at the thing he's trying to kill, and of course, when he does, it ends up killing somebody else.
Yeah.
I think I accidentally killed Judd's character, and then of course I accidentally killed myself. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, because the thing with Cult Divinity Lost, like you said, powered by the apocalypse. Powered by the apocalypse is an aberration that I really like. I really enjoy because it is actually a tabletop role-playing game system, but it is explained like a storytelling system. So they don't really understand the difference between storytelling and playing a role. They think it is the same, exactly the same thing. But you're not telling us a story about your characters. You're playing the role of your character. So that's what a lot of confusion stems from. People look at Cult Divinity Lost and they tell you about the story, and they think, oh, so you're kind of like telling a story, and you have like the script, and they have to do the dialogues, and you tell a story about the characters, but it's role playing. That's why people get into some clunky situations. They try to use role play mechanics as a storytelling device.
Powered
I
by the
think
Apocalypse is a kind of a strange beast. It's not exactly a story game, but it's not exactly a role playing game as well. It's
the problem with that with like they made some people have made some good games using that system, but the problem with it is people tend to use the moves in them to explain too much or to like or players tend to limit themselves to only those moves. So like each character has like these special moves that they do that you can rely on, and in certain circumstances. But I've seen games where they try to like apply them to things that you would normally role play, like say how factions work, where some of them like you could zoom out and now you're dealing with the faction. So two factions talking to each other, and okay, I want to use my resources and I want to use this. And I'm like, well, wait, couldn't one faction lie and say, no, yeah, I'm going to give it to you. And then when you need it most, they don't let you have it. It's like a Dune scenario where now you're getting wiped out by your enemies and the person betrayed you. And, you shouldn't be taking things away from a role playing game. Everything should add to it. So, um, with individual characters, if you have moves, you should still be able to do things that are outside of those moves, or if anything, you should be able to fit some of what you want to do into a move. Like, okay, well, does it, could you simulate it by using this move, to give you those bonuses or whatever it gives you? So it's basically a system where it's I would use this analogy like where it's like the cave on Dagobah, like it's only what you bring with you, so if you have like a fairly decent system, but you just latch on some crappy things to it to make a game, and you don't make good use of it, you're going to get what you put in. So some games it doesn't work, some games have used it in novel ways, to try to do things like Abraham. You play a lot of free league games. Like they have similar rules, but each game has a mechanic or something that helps simulate that genre, that world, movie, whatever it's trying to copy. And you go, okay, that works, yeah, because the characters might do this in that situation. That's when it shines. But the problem, especially with a lot of people who want to like, I made this thing and it's using this popular game system powered by the apocalypse, buy my thing. And you go, yeah, but you didn't really make good use of it. You just made this, artsy type of idea, that hinges on these game mechanics, and it doesn't really do anything. It doesn't establish what you're trying to do. It doesn't make the game world any better. So that's kind of like the pros and cons of that system.
The problem is that the author tried to separate himself from other tabletop RPGs. He started, no, here you have the moves, but the moves, it's pure show. It's superficial. They give you make a roll, and you have these many options. But if you take a look at the options, it's pretty much anything that you would normally do in any situation. When I run Call Divinity Lost for Miguel, Sylvia, Pedro, and Judd, they just describe their actions. They describe their actions. I make call for a roll. Roll this. Roll that. They make the roll. Based on the result, maybe they get additional actions. Maybe they
Yeah.
get other effects. So I always tell, for example, Miguel usually likes to use a spear he made out of his dreams. It's a very weird situation. But he has his spear, right? And he makes his roll. If he rolls poorly, he misses, or maybe the spear just makes a superficial cut. Oh, but he got a good roll. And I inform Miguel, you realize that you still have time to carry out another action. And then he does the other action. So people don't need to memorize or have like a list of moves. Oh, let me look at my menu of moves. No. Describe your action. The game master may call for a roll. Make your roll, and based on the result, something happens.
I think with some of those games, though, I think for people who do get like player paralysis and they don't know what to do, I think, oh, they love it because now here's a thing that tells you in this situation you could do this and get a bonus dice, or when you aid a party member, and again, like these are things that you might do in a game normally anyway, and maybe if you had traditional classes, they would get a bonus, say. So it's really not different from a traditional RPG. It's just they kind of tack on, they separate it, or they give it, fancy names. Like a friend of mine ran one that was it was based on the music of the band Faith No More. And it was kind of like a Satanic Panic type of scenario where it takes place in the 90s, and your friend that you used to role play with is missing, and now you have to find him. But you basically get exposed to this drug he was working on, and now your D&D world characters becomes real, and you kind of enter that world. So it was kind of cool, but it worked off that system. So each character was like like an archetype of a certain type of character, a young person, like from the 90s, like the slacker or the weird kid or something like that. Kind of like Tales from the Loop in a way. So and each one of those characters had these moves. If you do this, you get this bonus if you do that. But I find, again, with a lot of those games, people either limit themselves to those moves because they can't think outside the box, or they can't think in the mindset of their character and say, I want to do this, I want to do that. What about this? And I think when people play those games for years, they're not confined to that. So they're more likely to say, okay, I want to do this. Do one of these moves encompass that, or does it fall under one of those moves? And that's when it works well as a game. When you're not limiting yourself. But I think a lot of people are newer into it. They think no game has ever worked like this before, and of course they have. We just had different ways of explaining it or different mechanics, but it's not. People talk about this like it was the the invention of the wheel. Like, oh, no other game has ever been as good as Powered by the Apocalypse, and it's like, and before I knew it, I was like, okay, I'll buy it. Let me see how it is, and it's just different names for things, a little bit different way of going about it, but it doesn't anything or subtract anything from any type of traditional role-playing game experience. It might help those players with the player
My
paralysis,
reaction
like I
to it
said.
was a bit different. Was like,
Yeah.
oh, this is crap. I don't want to play any Powered by the Apocalypse game ever again. Like, this is stupid. I'm just, no, no, why are you? No, this is. I understand. This is people trying to be clever. Don't try to be clever. Just do a game. You're trying to
Yeah,
be clever.
if you play like a
That's
traditional
not-
game, it works exactly the same. You know, it's
Yeah,
but
just ignore this bullshit.
Mm,
This is just trying to
yeah,
be clever, and different, and for no
well, it
reason.
depends. If, for example, in Dungeons and Dragons, you have your hit points and your spell effects and all that. But Call of Divinity Lost encourages you to, if the context makes it necessary, and sometimes they don't explain this in many players' handbooks from Dungeons and Dragons. A single well-placed attack could be the end of you. Like, no matter how many hit points you have, it could be the end of your character or the enemy. So it depends on the role again. So I
yeah.
think people get too trapped into the mechanics. They look at cult powered by the apocalypse, and they look, oh yes, this is incredibly innovative. But you could say they streamlined the resolution so that it veers away from the game mechanics of you have this number of hit points, you deal this much damage with the spell, to give context the priority.
I think with games where you have like the possibility of anything could kill a character at any time, I kind of like that. You know, when I was younger, I wanted everything to be finite and have hit points, stuff like that. But like aside from fantasy games, you know, that are mainly hack and slash, you know, the long battles and whittling down people's hit points and stuff like that, um, sometimes it's not realistic. You know, especially if you have uh, regular human characters instead of more heroic characters. Um, so I kind of like the old uh, Empire of the Petal Throne. The Tekken game had that D20 rule where if you roll a critical and then you roll another 20, you can instantly kill someone. It doesn't matter if it's the peasant or the knight. You know, you just got a lucky shot. You shot through the visor of their helmet. You know, things happen. So that I like that element of danger. You know, so games that are um, a bit more on the realistic side, you know, sometimes that really sells it. You know, makes it more interesting.
It all depends on what you enjoy when it comes to the game mechanics. Because some people could look for that experience that, oh, I want to see this tense long battle when you are chipping away at the health or hit points or whatever
Yeah,
of the opponent. And some other cases you want, now you want, I want fast, gritty, lethal. So it's all
yeah.
about your preference.
It's nice to have different things in the toolbox. You know, with different you could simulate different genres and different you know, movies, IPs, novels. You know, because not everything you know can be D&D or you know you want to you don't want to apply that across the board to everything. You know, like the Red Room games. You know, the characters tend to be more mortal, fragile, basket cases in some situations, you know, and so you get that feeling of peril, you know, that I'll just whip out my magic sword or my energy beam gun, you know, and mow down the troops, and you know, then oh, we're gonna take a nap, and all our hit points will be restored. You know, that's kind of ridiculous in like a gritty modern setting.
Yeah, for a horror
Although
game.
we still have some surprising cases. Do you know about Joseph Greenstein? The Mighty Atom, very famous like bodybuilder. Search some of his videos. He was very strong. He could crack metal nails with his teeth.
Oh,
He could
they created a comic book character, but was based on him, the
really.
DC character. Yeah,
I didn't know, but he was super strong.
the
He
original
actually took
Golden.
a bullet to the head. Bullet to the head. The bullet bounced off of him, of his skull.
Okay, yeah,
So there are people that are very very strong. So, but like I said, it's more about the genre. If you are going to play like Conan, then having a hero that resists those sorts of things, it's perfectly in tune. But if you want something a bit more realistic, like Captain Alatriste or something, then you want something grittier.
yeah. Did we
Yeah,
lose? Is OSR Dwarf still with us?
sorry.
He's killing the commie orcs. He's busy.
Yeah, it disconnected the sound, so it's probably killing some commie orcs.
Nah, I'm here. I just had myself muted.
No.
Hmm.
So what's your take on this?
I don't know. I have such I have such a negative impression of certain categories of games. It's like
Well, the people making them doesn't help.
here's my feeling on the matter. If I have to work hard to make a system work for me, I don't want to worry about playing it
Oh yeah.
because there are other systems I can play that work better, and that it's not even a matter of my knowing it better; they just work better. It's very easy for me to do, for instance, Traveler. I know that we've talked about that in the Red Room server in another context because I played so much Traveler. I have all the books. I'm familiar with the system, but also the truth of the matter is I also know how to change it. It's actually a very flexible system. Um, the basics of it are simple. I think that the character generation throws people off, but when you understand it's a mini game, it gives you a different impression of it.
You're talking about the original Traveler?
Yeah, the classic Traveler, like what you were looking at in that bundle.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, that's a very good bundle. That would give you pretty much everything, including some of the war games that came out of classic Traveler.
Ooh,
Which
okay.
I actually have the little black books and my small box set from 1981. Still have that sitting upstairs. I have the Alien books. I have Striker, which was the war game. I have Snapshot. So very easy to get into that. Very easy to get into OSR style games. Some more than others. BX is a go-to, but with the modern OSR, it's even simpler because a lot of the rough parts are smoothed away, and I can make adaptations. It's a lot easier to improvise, right? I mean, this is something where you can improvise, and it's because you basically have a very simple system, and you don't have to wade through weird ways of describing game mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the thing. I mean, it's like I still have my old Call of Cthulhu box set. I actually have the first edition from way back in the day, Sandy Peterson's version of the game. And I played a lot of Call of Cthulhu. And the irony is I did it primarily by ignoring how basic role playing, which was their name for their system, ignoring how they handled skills. Because it sucked. D100 systems stank. But because the system was basically simple, it wasn't that difficult for me to make the changes that I needed to make. If you look at, I think they extracted BRP into like a little booklet, and if you look at it, it's a remarkably simple system. So with Powered by the Apocalypse, I have Dungeon World, I have Cult Divinity Lost, Cult 4th Edition. I have various PBTA systems. I've never particularly liked any of them. Some are better than others, but it's the focus on scenes and other, what I would call movie. How many of the people who have come into the hobby as quote unquote designers are really wannabe screenwriters? Because that's the language they tend to use. It's the language of a failed screenwriter. Sorry, guys, if I said failed and that hurts somebody's feelings out there. But, that's that. I'm always hard dwarf. I tend to do that. No, it's seriously, it's like they use that language. And it's like, guys, it's a game.
That is true.
It's not a screenplay. It's a game.
Well, let's be fair. Like some of the things that we come up with, like we come up with these takes on things in Miguel's games, stuff like that. So we like our fiction and stuff like that too. So I don't mind so much if someone goes into like, a descriptive text over something, but I guess there's a fine line, when some people come off as pretentious in what they write, or if they actually want to entertain, like if they're just as excited about the thing they're describing as you are to read it, then it's cool. But when it's, there's some people that they just write their failed fiction, and they're so much in love with it, and you're like, oh, please, where does this end, but there are some good people out there who write some interesting stuff, but you know, it's I'm always happy to see creative stuff out there, but not everybody is good. You know, like you said, you know, there's some real stinkers out there, but they don't know they're stinkers. You know, and you get subjected to it.
It's
But
like
you
the
know,
Forge. I mean, if you want to talk about something that's had
Forge was
long,
cancer.
yeah, if you want to talk about something that's had a long reach in the hobby, and it's very easy to fall into using their terminology, but they don't even necessarily mean the same things when they use it that most people who played the game at the time meant.
what did these
And
people make? I got
the
lost in
Forge,
that whole.
the Forge is
Yeah.
particularly known for their story games. That's where a
Okay.
lot of that came from. They wanted to reimagine gaming. They're not the only ones. There was also a lot of the people who got into the so-called game masterless games, which I think is a variation on the solo gaming concept, came through that. But it has produced some pretty noxious
That
products.
that's the whole other
Including
thing is
Powered by the Apocalypse. The Vincent Baker was one
Yes,
of the Forge
that's
guys.
probably the most famous product of the Forge is PBTA.
okay.
Um,
I didn't realize
and
those were people behind it, but
yeah,
yeah,
it's Apocalypse World. Apocalypse World.
yeah, okay,
That's where it
that
began.
makes sense now. But
I also
His
saw
Forge
Mary.
game was called Dogs in the Vineyard. I never played it,
Oh yeah,
but I know that
yeah.
was awful.
I also saw merit
Um,
in what you said, Mark, when it comes to the movie thing. I think there is a confusion. There is a confusion because in movies, the characters, they think that their world is real. But many of the movie style games, they make it look as if everything is scripted and seen from way from the audience's eyes. And the characters, what we love about Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, etc., any of the movie representations of any sort of fiction, is that the characters think that their world is real. So you don't have like scenes and scripted events.
yeah, meta narrative was a big issue with the Forge because they're constantly breaking the fourth wall, and it's like, guys, it's not a work of fiction; it's a game. These characters are real in their world. That's why we call them player characters.
yeah,
They have a world they exist in, they operate, and then I don't know. It's I don't want to get into a whole thing about the Forge because it's annoying anyway. But and of course it's dead. But I guess that's why I have such strong opinions about certain kinds of games because they don't even feel like games to me. And to me, it's too much work to make them one. I'd rather put that time into creating my game world or my adventures. And like I said, I think if you're a certain kind of game master, the improvisation with OSR style games or 2D6 system style games like Cepheus Engine is not difficult because you just have to bear in mind what the basic elements of the system are. In the case of OSR, the most basic element is the D20 roll. This determines huge numbers of things. It's the random element in the game. And you're almost always looking at a target number. This is actually the similarity between it and 2D6 system, where you also have target numbers, and they're very explicit about that. So you're looking for a target number, and do you roll over it? Do you roll under it? And this is actually why, though I am a grognard and I'm an old man, and this is a controversial issue with a lot of the younger guys, I've actually never missed the inverted AC system that was inherited from AD&D Second Edition and
the
DX.
DACO.
Yeah, THACO people don't understand its origins. It was never meant to be the default system. The default system was the combat grid.
Yeah,
THACO was really meant to be for monsters, and then it became the default system in AD&D Second Edition because it proved suitable and basic, right? So they copied that. But I actually thought personally that third edition kind of fixed that problem because they recognized it's like, rolling high is better throughout most of the system. Why are we doing it wrong in these particular cases?
But you were still rolling high with DACO.
But THACO was an inverted system, so you had to do a calculation. Whereas with ascending armor class, the high rolling and the armor class correlate. Whereas in the old THACO system, I mean, you actually end up with negative armor classes, and you start to think about that, and it's like, okay, that is because the original idea was you couldn't get an armor class better than 0.
Yeah, well,
It's
the
talking about white
reason
box.
the reason some people still like to use it, the explanation I've heard is that the range of and it's not a great uh excuse, but the range of possible ACs is more finite, whereas the D20 systems tend to make you go towards higher numbers and stuff like that. But that's it's six
That's
of
not
one, half
true,
dozen the
though,
other. Yeah,
because
well,
that's how we ended up with negative ACs in the first
I,
place.
I didn't say I agree with it, but
Yeah,
that's the
it's a weak
reasoning.
it's a
But
weak argument.
I don't mind using it out of nostalgia. It doesn't really bother me. But I just feel that the other way is better. It's easier, it's smoother. You don't have to consult anything because let's face it, if you took away the DACO charts for most people, nowadays very few people would be able to say like, okay, do I hit like you have that set target number, it's easy to work with. So there's no
Yeah,
reason not to use it. But
In my
it's
case,
easier to
the
design
people
classes too.
that I
yeah.
have seen that they love the taco is because they love looking at the table. Like they make the roll. Oh, I hit. Oh,
It's
oh,
it's
I missed. Like
nostalgia.
that's
Yeah,
why they
it,
like it.
it's just what they like. I mean, some people will argue to death. They'll die in a hell over. It should be this way because, like, no, just admit it. You just like it that way. It feels comfortable to you. It's your old shoe or
It's
whatever you
nostalgia.
want to call it. Yeah, so that's fine. Then you use it, but don't tell everyone else like you must to play any type of D&D. You must be this edition with this DACO and like really, dude, who cares? At the end of the day, like as long as you're achieving what the game is supposed to be, and so many people, even people who would normally agree with each other, over what they like and stuff like that, they'll be at each other's throats over some nuance of some addition or what Gary Gygax wrote or what he didn't write. Like, who cares? How are you doing it at your table? That's at the end of the day, that's all that matters. But we know there's people on a daily basis who are want to pontificate over the merits of this and raw and one-to-one time, and it's whatever you do is fine. Whatever, then if your players are having fun, then you must be doing something right. um
Oh, and
and
heaven
if
forfend that you suggest that having fun is the
Do
reason you
not
do
say
it.
that.
yeah
That's offensive.
I'm not
or
going
in
to name
Miguel's game, if
there's a
if the
person.
players are in misery and impending doom, then you must be doing something right.
No, right. Well, you're doing something right when it comes to having fun. But if you're saying
Yeah.
like you're playing a tabletop role playing game and you play, this is how we play tabletop RPGs. We just take the miniatures and we start throwing it at each other, the miniatures, to see if we hit each
Yeah.
other. You're having fun, but it's not like
Not that extreme. I mean, as far as like within certain parameters, not just like a free for all. Because I'm the first person to say like like these games that have no rules or and I love improv gaming. It's not that I don't, but the games that are so rules light as far as like they didn't even complete the assignment. They made a game and it's like, yeah, let's put some splash art here and make a giant picture of a weapon and have a decent, no, like there should be some meat and potatoes to the game and something you do on a regular basis. But just
Or Vampire the Masquerade. There's a
yeah,
reason why Vampire
Oh yeah, I
became the
guess
source of LARPing.
yeah.
right now, yeah. I was a player of Vampire, but I didn't pay that much
I played
attention to it.
Werewolf, but as a traditional RPG.
I love all
Well,
of
that's
the
what it
old
was
world
designed to
RPGs.
be.
Mhm.
Yeah,
It's highly ironic they called their game system the Storyteller system. This is well pre-Forge, and they meant something a little bit
yeah.
different from it. But
It's funny.
yeah,
I know there's a lot of uh like you talk about the Forge. When I heard about Powered by the Apocalypse, I never heard their name mentioned. And I guess the original creator of Dungeon World, I heard that name. And then later on I heard all these people who made things using the system. So all this other debacle about them, like I had never heard until recently. But what was the major issue with them? Like, were they trying to just say that they reinvented RPGs and nothing else was as good,
Powered by
or
the Apocalypse, I think it was post Forge, a few years.
if you're
okay,
talking about the Forge generally, the Forge was about meta narrative in gaming.
okay,
So you had this one particular individual, and those who followed him started trying to quote unquote deconstruct gaming and say this is the essence of that,
Yes,
and that is
mother,
this, and that. And
mother.
yeah, here's a new term for this thing, and
oh,
And it's at the end of the day, guys, it's role playing games. And the problem is that these guys talked so much, but
Oh
they
yeah.
didn't really produce games that mattered very much, with the sole exception of Powered by the Apocalypse. And yeah, and you're right. Technically, that is post Forge, but it came out of
Yes,
people who were associated with the
yeah.
Forge,
So
The
now
guy
you
who
mentioned
and it
people,
uses their
like
concepts.
But
you men-
if I remember correctly, the big Forge game, big no one played them. It was Sorcerer, the game by the Forge guru Ron Edwards. Then there was My Life with Master. I don't know if anyone played that. Probably not. And there was that Dogs in the Vineyard. Then there was Primetime
these all sound
Adventure.
horrible.
Yeah, they were all horrible. Yes, definitely.
I never heard of them.
Story games. All of those are story games,
Yeah.
and basically it was actually about story. So you didn't play characters. The characters were gimmicks. You were playing yourself.
Authors, you're playing authors, writers.
Authors, exactly.
I think that's
Going
part of the
into the
problem is that
story.
some people think the role playing means I'm playing a part and in a play and somewhat, but you are the character. Yes, you're an actor, but that's only on the surface. You are that character who thinks that their world is real, that everything that's going on them is real. They don't have metagame knowledge. They're not playing to an audience. They're trying to survive their world, and they're trying to they're trying to accomplish goals. They're trying to make connections. And someone had mentioned people want to play like GM-less games. And to me, at least what I found is that a lot of those people, these are the people who they can't abide any rules in real life. They don't like to be told no in the real world. So they
Yep.
gravitate towards these games where like there's no rules. You do whatever you want. Nothing matters. And that's
Or the rules make any notion of having a coordinator irrelevant, and that's
yeah.
and this is where I ended up in arguments with people who don't understand what West March style gaming is. West March is not old school. West March is third edition. Um, West March happened because there was a rule set that was sufficiently coherent that it didn't require rulings. And so the guy who came up with West March, because that was the actual name of the campaign, to minimize his own role, he put together a big group of people and said, okay, whatever this set of rules allows you to do, you can do. And that's it. And it's up to you to drive the action.
But here's the
And
problem with that though. The GM's part of the GM's job is to be the arbiter of the rules, right? So no rule set will be 100% crystal clear. So you're going to have things that come up. Hey, can we do this? What do you think? So that's why you have that person. It's just like
right,
anything else. Like
right.
a judge of a competition. Well, does this count? Does this earn him points? Whatever. So at the end of the day, that's just one of the GM's jobs, not the job, but the GM's
I mean,
job
if,
is
if
also to
people
help.
want to do West
Yeah.
March's style, play fourth edition. And you probably can do it with as little
Yeah.
GM input as possible, because
Or
it was
now
a
you
very
can
coherent rule system.
now you can completely automate games too. You could have Chat GPT
Yeah,
run your game. You can do all
yeah.
kinds of stuff, but that's not really a role playing game, because the and hey, I wouldn't mind trying a game where we're all players and something else is doing the work for us. We're just making roles, but part of the GM's job is to be there with the players in some sense and collaborating with it and helping to guide the flow. Not to be a railroad GM where you're forcing people to go everywhere, but you're kind of building the roads, and then the players they choose those roads, and then you go from there. And it's a back and forth. Like I always say, like the GM and the players should be riffing off each other. That should be more the what's the expression, like the some of the parts should be more than the whole, and that's ultimately what you want to bring to the table. You don't want just the players saying I do this and the GM can't tell me no because I have ultimate agency over this entire world, and you can't have the GM telling the players like nothing you do matters because in my world this is going to happen and you can't affect it, you can't change it in any way. So there has to be a blend.
That's a storytelling game, definitely, because that reminds me, Raven, this game behind me, which is based on Edgar Allan Poe. It's a storytelling tabletop RPG hybrid game. So you have segments where you have complete control over the game world. You can tell a story about your character. You have control over the non-player characters, what you encounter, what is inside the drawer. You can describe it. But then it jumps to pure roleplay, where you take actions within the game world, and the game master describes what happens.
Hmm.
So it's all about understanding that separation between storytelling and playing a role. Storytelling, you are the author. You write whatever you want. It's your story
Yeah.
to write. But in role playing, it's just like we are sitting right now in front of our computers, right? We are not performing for some audience, or we are not writing a story about what we are talking. We are just interacting with the world.
Yeah.
So when I did the Bell accession or the Bale accession, I had a map and I had some notes. And of course, I had Darker RPG. I had the rules set. And that's where I started. So much of it was improvised along the way that I still haven't gotten it pulled into a coherent scenario. It's still primarily notes and a map and other things. You can't have that in a GM-less game. You can't have that kind of, to me, that's what really makes it fun, is you have someone at the table whose job is to be the guy who constructs the adventure for you and is able to respond to your actions in real time. There were many things that Miguel and Sylvia and Judd, and there were many things that they did, right, that were not something I had kind of allowed for in advance. So I basically had to make things up as I went.
Mm.
Now, I acknowledge not everybody can do that or wants to do that. But if you don't have a dungeon master or a game master or a referee or a crypt or a keeper or whatever you want to call them, you don't get that. And to be frank, you don't really get it from solo role play either. You certainly don't get it from storytelling games, because those are based largely on consensus at the table.
Well, you do get it, but from yourself, you're still playing like half the part of a game master. Mm-hmm.
And to me, a significant part of the fun of putting together the Bale session was to give both myself and the players the opportunity to play in a universe that had a definite form and format, and yet ultimately their actions would determine what happened next. And I couldn't know in advance what those were. All I could do is respond to that. Similarly, when they did something, they couldn't know what the result would be. The end result of the game was determined by their actions. There was no, I had a vague outline. I knew what was happening with the villain, or I should say villains. I knew what the situation was, but how or even if they would get there, I didn't know. I also had to adjust the fact that a player went missing. You know, Pedro went missing before the game was over. So, you know, we had to adjust to his absence in the game because we were right in the middle of something.
A good game master should be able to pivot. Yeah.
Yeah, you got it. And so I feel like that fun gets lost in GM-less or DM-less systems. Interaction between people. I mean, there used to be a time we couldn't play these games online. And interactions between people are still the most fun part of it to me. You know, the reality is nowadays it's very difficult for people to play face-to-face in some areas unless you go to a convention or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, the days when you could go down to your friendly local gaming store and there were a bunch of tables in the back and people could just, you know, grab a table and play. It's just not like that anymore. Most of those
it's few and
game
far
stores
between.
don't exist.
I've seen them, but now most of the game stores are more, if they have that type of thing, you'll see like maybe one little table in the back with people playing 5e. The rest of it is all miniature combat, Magic the Gathering cards. Like, so I would say like maybe 90% of it is you know, wargaming, you know, battle tech and this and that, you know, and then the people playing cards.
Things the store can sell.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
To be perfectly frank, it's things the store can sell. And you know, the role players, like I said, the days when you can just grab a table, they just don't provide that space anymore. But of course, you know, it used to be And I've seen these places. I remember them. I mean, they would have like 20 tables just sitting in a back room, and the place was set up like in a strip shopping mall storefront or an
Yeah.
old garage or any number of places you'd find these stores. And they just don't exist anymore. But I
Well,
mean, we can still do a lot of it online now,
years
especially
ago,
with the game shelves getting
yeah,
better.
years ago, we even had places that were dedicated to it. Even
Yeah.
like pre-COVID, there was a place that kind of brought it back. But it was still mostly card games and miniature games. Years ago, the big place in Manhattan was like Complete Strategist. I think they had like a whole floor of gaming and stuff like that. I don't think they have that anymore. They might, it still exists in some small capacity. I think COVID killed a lot of it too. Same thing with convention attendance and stuff like that. But it's starting to come back.
Did you
Um,
know that in Japan they have tabletop RPG cafes?
yeah,
I've
and
It's a
heard that,
cafe
yes.
with the
that that
game masters that run the game for the people sitting at the table. Uh-huh.
that became a thing in like Seattle, but no one wants to play with those people.
I've read stories about what Wizards of the Coast was apparently like when they really first started. And by all accounts, it was actually a fun place
Different,
to work.
yeah,
It was
much more.
very different. And the guy who founded it was kind of a fun boss. But the thing is, once they got big, once they got corporate, suddenly HR comes in, certain behavior is considered dangerous to the company's well-being because it could result in
Yeah,
lawsuits. Apparently, they got into all kinds of wild stuff, and it's like, yeah, okay, then they took all the fun out of it.
but some of the
You
original
know,
people are the culprits themselves because they fell into it. They green lighted it, and what wasn't the president I think left at some point.
oh
Um,
yeah,
but
yeah,
he allowed it all to happen. But when it was D&D Next, when fifth edition was first coming out, it was kind of cool. I think that was one of the I went to Gen Con twice, so I think it was the first time I went. That's what was going on then, and it was great. I got to play test it. I was all about it. I was like, wow, this is really great. It seems like a much bigger improvement over 3.x or whatever, and because I totally ignored fourth edition, even though some of that stuff made it into fifth. But they rushed it at the end, so the game they actually produced didn't use everything that was supposed to be in next. And then it kind of like it was cool in the beginning, but again, it's more of like a super heroic form of D&D, so it's moving even further and further away from its roots. And the great thing about it was that there was a lot of third party content for other genres, science fiction, you name it, that started to come out. But then it took a nosedive. It became nothing like what it was supposed to be. Then they went on that campaign where they were gonna say everything about D&D past was wrong or bigoted or this or that, and they kept digging the hole deeper. So anybody who played these games before, any iteration of it, who is on board with what it is now, like I don't know what to say for them, because you've seen better, how it should work, and now you just like it because it has the brand name slapped on it. At some point you have to say this is not the thing that I signed on for. This is not what I enjoyed. It's totally different from anything resembling D&D. It's bland art, uninspired storytelling. They constantly rehash the old settings because they're creatively bankrupt. They make nothing new. They make is good. It's all horrible. And I hear this even from people who they want to love it. Oh, I bought the new Ebron, but I'm really not happy with it. Yeah, because you bought the same junk they keep producing. Like, move on.
For me, fourth
yeah.
edition killed much of the magic of Dungeons and Dragons. It was a weird situation because with fourth edition, you started to get these ridiculous commercials. You had the tiefling and I don't know what else, a gnome and a tiefling sitting in a David Letterman type of setting. Like, oh, tell us about your new features, tiefling. And they had like this. They started to make everything out of context. They killed fantasy, but then they went to fifth edition, and the very start, the early start of fifth edition, I think it was good. They started to return back to form. They had these soft focus illustrations that were not completely woke. They gave you like these landscapes. You felt as if you were standing there in the mountains adventuring with the other people. You were in the tavern. Then they started to go woke, right? But what I loved
Yeah.
about the older editions of Dungeons and Dragons is that you had this very powerful sense of mystery. Every single fucking time I read those magazines, Dragon, Dungeon, I felt like I was being pulled into this amazing world. I
Yeah.
could feel my breath like hastening, like I
Sure.
want to play this. I want to go into that world, and I
You
don't
wanted
get
to
any
put
of
the
that
posters
right
that
now.
came in those magazines, you wanted to hang on your wall because they were cool. They evoked the setting. They
Yeah, I
made
think
you, yeah.
the art did a lot for the first
Oh
editions,
yeah,
and this one destroys everything with the art. It's the first
yeah.
thing you see is the cover. So it's if the cover is not inspiring, I think it makes it rubbish. Even if the content is not bad, but
The
the art.
covers for the fifth edition books, I think they are good. You have the Player's Handbook, this adventurer jumping against the fire giant. You have this in the monster manual, the Beholder throwing all sorts of magical effects and a wizard like yelling "run." And in the it still felt very evocative,
But
but that,
but
that was the
maybe
last hurrah.
I think their art department choices probably started there because I didn't think the Player's Handbook for fifth edition that cover was that great because it's very dark. You don't see a lot of detail. It's not very heroic. I mean, there's other products they had in the beginning that are better, but that in particular, I always looked at it because I've used that book a lot, and I said, yeah, this is not the greatest, for this is the main book that people are going to see. I think they could have did better with that. Not a terrible artist, just very
Mm.
dark, and um, yeah, if they're in a dungeon, you want dark tones and stuff like that, but not everything should be dark. And now everything is dark, bland, muted tones. People who don't look heroic, or from what I understand, there's real art that sometimes they tweak after the fact. So you have people looking off in weird directions, with the monster killing their friend and they're not reacting to it, and something else is going on, and there's like half a creature over here, a dragon that doesn't look like a dragon. Obviously they have certain characters that you're not supposed to know their gender and stuff like that. And I'm like, who is this for? And then of course they tell us like this is not for you, like everything else in entertainment today. This is not for you. Okay, go away, boomer. Okay, old man, your time is done. This is our world now. Like, well, you know what? I'm the guy spending the money, so I'll decide that, and I'm not going to buy it. How about that? And of course, it hits them, and listen, a lot of the popularity, these shows like Critical Role and stuff like that, people are still loving that stuff and dumping money into it. They don't get it, but there are a lot of
Yeah,
people who
it's like
do.
don't
And
spend money on stuff that hates you, man. I mean,
and
that's
I
I've
what
gotten into it with a certain individual over that. And
yeah,
it's like, dude, why are you spending money on people that hate you? It makes no sense.
what does my heart good is that I see people, younger people now, who've gone back in time, and they want to play either old stuff or stuff inspired by the old stuff, and they go, oh, what is this? Oh, this is so much better than that piece of crap that my friend was playing with me. So there is hope that people get it, because to me the experience should be like what you saw in the original days of like the dungeon master telling you, okay, you enter the dungeon and here's what you smell, and the torches flicker and you hear the sounds of cackling in the distance, and you enter a blah 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 by blah 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 room, and here's what you see. Okay, what do you do? And now the people they're totally immersed. Okay, I'm playing this character. I'm such and such, the elf, or the paladin or whatever, and I'm in it now. I have to decide what to do. Okay, go. And no, it's now they try to make it like, all right, it's going to be this you know production of Bye Bye Birdie. Everybody put on your satin jackets, okay, and we're going to sing this song, and all the spotlights on this guy over here now, okay. And no, that's not a role-playing game. That's not, and sure, you could do that, but don't tell me it's Dungeons and Dragons. Don't say like this is this game, or don't make take any other game that we've played in the past, Shadowrun, something else, and totally change all the elements of it, and then tell me, oh, but it's the same thing. Well, no, if you remove all the elements that made it unique, that made it what it was, it's not that thing anymore. It's not the same entity. But
It's like they try to sand off all of the sharp edges so much. Like
yeah,
they want to get you into the least confrontational mood possible. No danger. No, it's like you're walking into the Starbucks. Everything is okay. Can you please, evil master of the dungeon, can you please tell me if there is the ramp for the combat wheelchair to descend, because my friend is having trouble going down the dungeon. We need the ramp.
It,
You
it's
know,
like
so,
those
so,
things.
so
You ever see those things they put on furniture for kids, for babies, like the furniture guards, so they don't like take their eye out, on the coffee table or something like that. That's what I feel like they've done to this
You can
game.
hurt
Like,
yourself.
yeah, they've made it
Or
a
you can
coffee
just
table game. Yeah,
play characters going to the market and
yeah,
talking to each other, and then they
going
go to
going
a
to the
party.
discotheque.
it feels like a lot of them suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. Like they cannot tolerate the idea of something
They all
very,
suffer
very
from it.
dangerous, scary. With Ravenloft, the new book of Ravenloft, you should run it like Scooby-Doo, because otherwise your players could get scared.
Yeah, and then you can't use any of the elements that make a Gothic horror. Like, don't say gypsies. What do you mean? You cannot say that word. But all right, they've been called that for hundreds of years. And no, you can't. Well, why can't I? It's been in this movie. It's been no. You call them this. Okay, but in that time period, if it's supposed to resemble this, place on Earth, even though it's a fantasy setting, it has this. Oh no, we can't do that. Or the other problem with that is uh apparently they had some scenario where this woman is like, oh, my child, and then they have to give them a plural pronoun. Like, no, you know what your child is. And or they describe a girl, like a little girl, but now the mother of that child launches into like a plural pronoun. And I'm like, yeah, this didn't exist in any type of. You're trying to emulate a medieval type world, a fantasy world, and it doesn't work in that situation. People want to believe it does, going back to the dawn of history. No, the people identified each other very simply. Even in a world of elves and dwarves and everything like that, it's going to default to how human beings regard each other. So when you try to inject this into a game, you ruin it. You know, it comes off like a record skip. And that's the problem with half of this stuff.
It's an obvious token bias, because they're never going to tell you, don't represent Vikings like drunks that attack people. That is offensive. No, no,
Yeah,
no. The Celts that cut the heads of people. No, 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 no. You
yeah.
apologize to the Celts right now. They're not going to tell you that.
They're
It's
not
always
apologizing to the
the
Celts. Maybe
token.
some other groups they'll tell you not to denigrate. But if you're anything Western European, then anything is fine. You
If
can
you have
try to,
brown people eating human beings, which is authentic, by the way, this is an unacceptable. Oh, you're saying that they're all cannibals. No, I'm saying that these particular ones are cannibals because they were.
well, Abraham was talking about
Oh,
games
the
that
poor Carib Indians, they were driven to extinction. Yes, because they were slavers who ate people and the Spaniards killed them. Oh, the poor Aztecs, they pulled living people's hearts out and threw the body down the steps. It's okay that Hernan Cortez killed them.
Yeah, when it comes to, well, as a Mexican, there is a lot of misinformation. That is, you are describing what is correct when it comes to the ones that usurped the Aztec Empire, because people become aware that our chief deity Quetzalcoatl was blonde and blue-eyed. Blonde and blue-eyed. Don't believe me? Check the Mayan codices, the Aztec writings. Blonde and blue-eyed, and they don't tell you that. As a Mexican, look it up. This is
yeah,
Yeah,
actual evidence.
that's forbidden knowledge now, right?
Uh-huh.
But you were
yeah.
talking, Abraham, about games that are afraid to include slavery, and I've seen a lot of that. And you can't if you're trying to make something that's humans can relate to, and it's something that's all right, a medieval or low technology setting. These things are going to exist. People being shitty to one another. That's it happened for thousands of years, and if anything, it grants you role playing opportunities, right? Like you could try to free slaves, or maybe your character was a slave, and now okay, now I have a backstory. He escaped the slavers, he did this or whatever, but they're so timid, so afraid of these things as taboo topics. Oh well, okay, but in our world, nobody ever had slavery, so everyone is tra la la and holding hands and skipping, and this bad thing never happened. And that, well, then the world is not realistic because we know, you know, human beings or even creatures that resemble them are gonna you're gonna have bad ones, or you're gonna have certain behavior that goes on, certain practices, and you could use that intelligently, in an adult way to tell a story. We're not saying that we condone those practices today, but this is what it was, So if you're in a fantasy setting, you expect to see those things. You expect to see brothels and and slave tradings and pit fighting and you name it, because that's what existed. We can only draw from our own parallels, from our own history, even in a fantasy setting, even in a science fiction setting. So the more further you move away from that, the less realistic it is.
And that's what disappointed me, because that's from Mutant Year Zero, post-apocalypse. It makes sense that they would have slaves in a savage world. So
Yeah.
I really, like I said, I really like the author Thomas. He has done wonderful work with Free League, but man, like, oh, don't include slaves. Slaves, don't include the slaves. And he's like, no, okay, they are not slaves. They are grunts. They are
There are
grunts.
no slaves in Mutant Year Zero.
Not anymore. In the first edition,
Oh, okay.
they was
They
slave,
removed them.
but they changed it to grunt. And you
Grunt?
can
They
even
just
see the
changed the name.
illustration.
It's not the
They
same
just
thing.
changed the name then. Yeah.
The illustration it remained the same. It's
Oh.
like a mutant with a chain tied to his ankle. So it's
Okay.
pretty much the same.
Okay, so
Yeah,
just
that's true, Doc Flamingo.
the name is problematic, so just remove it. But they are the same.
So this
That's
gets
ridiculous.
into the aspect of how much does this really have to do? How much of the woke crap that we see really has to do with BlackRock funded companies that impose certain editorial standards, and their justification is, well, this needs to be a game that appeals to everyone, and this is going to create a problem. It's kind of like being a preacher and being told, hey, listen, don't ever mention sin. If you mention sin, you won't grow your church. Hey, if you're creating a game, don't have slaves in your game. People will get upset and they won't buy it. They're not going to buy it anyway. I mean, this is the thing that drives me nuts. It's like, guys, they don't play.
I don't know if BlackRock and stuff like that would get so involved in those things. I mean, I'm sure they have low down on the totem pole people influencing culture and stuff like that. So that much is probably true. But yeah,
I always wonder where the money comes from.
Yeah,
because you have
suckers.
What I would regard as failed enterprises. These are they ingest money, they're getting it from somewhere, and then they go broke. It's like, okay, who paid for this and why did they do it? And you always trace it back. There's somebody funding it, and it's not private individuals. It's I see this, I guess, firsthand working at some of the companies I work for. That they don't actually do very well in the marketplace, but they're getting money. And, I know that when they cut US aid off, that killed off a lot of the NGOs. So we kind of know where some of the money was coming from there. But, and they complain a lot about it too. They were willing to shut the government down to try to get it back. So clearly they needed that cash.
Lately, I noticed that lots of local media are ruined. So I guess they were getting their money from somewhere, and probably it was from related to USA.
He who pays the check calls the dance. So yeah, I think that we're going to discover that a lot of what goes on is a matter of people who not only fund things but carefully try to avoid being seen funding them, because they know if they're identified, the game is up.
We know that there's definitely people involved because entertainment's become a lot of like small number of monopolies who even the monopolies are a bigger monopoly. They own each other, like Time Warner, Discovery, Paramount, and stuff like that. They're all you could look it up. It's there, and it's public knowledge. They're owned by the same people, and they even had a struggle recently. Should such and such be allowed to acquire such and such? And the same people own them, have controlling shares, because I guess people don't think of controlling shares as ownership, but if you own 70, 80, 90% of the stock, you own the company. That's how that works.
You don't even have to own that much.
No, you
have to own that much.
Absolutely.
If you are the single significant stockholder and you hold, say, 20% of the shares, and there's nobody else who holds more than 1%, guess what? You are the 800-pound.
You sit on the board and you make decisions. That's exactly how that works. And I don't. Maybe people don't realize this. So our choices are being more limited all the time. And and we don't think of it, as far as some people don't think of it as their entertainment, their news, their stuff like that. But you're all getting things from the same exact source. The same people are dictating, what's safe to see, what's not safe to see, and it's scary when you look at how much of it. So how much of it affects something like the role-playing game industry, which to us is just, it's a diversion, it's a hobby, these are books and stuff like that. But there's a lot of money going into it, especially with some of the crowdfunding and stuff like that. So if they're not involved in it, how long before they are? How long before they're not, putting out the official propaganda disguised as indie RPGs or Hasbro Wizards of the Coast and have they been doing it already? Because we know who controls most of these shares. That's the people are gonna listen to their marching orders.
What's driving Wizards' direction? Hasbro.
Yeah.
What's driving Hasbro's direction? The people who own the company and hold the money. Is Hasbro making good decisions? Objectively, no. Everybody understands that they're mishandling Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah.
Does it matter? Well,
they're
no.
making a lot of mistakes with their toy products too, because
they're screwing up.
Yeah.
They make money from Magic the Gathering, but Magic the Gathering is a very long in the tooth collectible card game. Yeah, it's the granddaddy, but there are alternatives, and they're not guaranteed continuing success. There are competitors out there. With Magic the Gathering, the big thing for them was always the art style. Magic always seemed to have great art. That's not necessarily true anymore.
No.
Have you seen the current state of Magic the Gathering? You have like Warhammer 40K in Magic the Gathering. You have Final Fantasy in Magic the Gathering. I wonder if there are Transformers as well. So before you had the beautiful exotic lands with wizards casting spells in the plains and the mountain swamps, and now I play Space Marine against your little pony. Like,
yeah, well, they have Spider-Man, they have you name it, and that's where it took off. They're making money that way with the licenses, sure. But yeah, I don't think there's enough competition in some of these areas. That's the problem. I think when Magic the Gathering first hit, it was doing well, but there are a lot of card games out there. You don't see anywhere near the amount of card games out there. Like I remember at the same time, I was buying like a Star Wars one. I picked up a Dune one. There was some fantasy one I never quite got into, and I actually liked those more than Magic, because to me Magic was very simple. Like I have my card deck and this, and yeah, there's some strategy to it, but I like the ones that played out more like a battle. Where there are more variables and stuff like that. And there were some great ones, and they didn't stick around long. They're certainly not making them today.
I think that simplicity explains it all, right? Like you cannot take, you could try to take the layman and explain them like a very rich, complex card game, and they're like, no, I don't understand. Like too much of a headache. I need something more simple.
Well, there's definitely strategy to Magic as far as like if you want to be a good player, and how you make the decks and stuff like that. And
well, MTG is the original pay to win game, right? If you're prepared to pay for the correct rare cards, you can create a basically unbeatable deck unless somebody else is prepared to spend, $5,000 building their deck just like you did. So, I mean, the myth there is that, if I just buy enough of these little packs, eventually I'll get my ultra rare card. And no, it doesn't.
Just believe in the heart of the cards and you will win.
There you go. And I'm not the best person to ask about Magic the Gathering because I never cared for the CCGs. I just never did. But, the closest I came to that was, I would do actual board games, right? There's some really fascinating, like Arkham Horror and games like that. There's some fascinating board games out there that I think actually do a pretty good job of being fun and a little different from like Monopoly and other traditional board games. But CCGs, that was just not my thing. And I know at the FLGSs, a lot of them, the only way they could sustain the hobby for the TTRP, for the tabletop role-playing side, is they had to be, magic shops too. and it was really Magic that was paying for everything else.
Well, and
Because you get
Pokemon
some
cards.
12-year-old coming in and blowing his entire allowance on, buying Magic cards.
Yeah, Pokemon was big too. That drove.
Pokemon, yeah, that's true.
Not only did that keep comic stores afloat, that also kept retail toy chains like Toys R Us and KB Toys and stuff like that. They were making a lot of money off it, off the tie-in toys. So
Yu-Gi-Oh also had an impact. Right now,
Yeah.
I'm not so sure, but back then, yeah.
yeah.
The problem is that many of these companies are mortally pissing off their player base. And, a perfect example of this is Warhammer. Or as some people call it woke hammer, other people call it gay hammer. I mean, it's like, guys, why are you, don't make the mistake Wizards did of letting a certain group of tourists invade your hobby and change it. But what I've heard from longtime 40K players is that, they've kind of already kind of turned, like in terms of the lore and all that kind of stuff that kind of provided a backdrop to the miniatures play. It's already kind of gone in a direction that they aren't liking. And besides which, they kind of rip their players off. They sell like cheap plastic models for huge amounts of money. And we live in the age of 3D printing. So, that's an expensive hobby to get into.
When you think about back in the day, like all this stuff comes from China now. Years ago, a lot of it was being produced in house. Especially stuff here. Like a lot of the old board game stuff like that were produced in the U.S. There was no outsourcing of parts.
Yeah.
But all that
same
went
thing with the miniatures. I mean,
and killing they make
companies like Ralpartha. They used to produce their stuff here, man. I mean,
that's why I don't like to hear the complaints. People, China, it's all Trump tariffs, stuff like that. Because before Trump was on the scene, China, there was that big debacle with shipping and stuff like that. Where especially after COVID, when it wasn't the fault of COVID, China was hijacking people's shipments, saying, "Oh, you have to pay us more to be moved up in the queue," and it absolutely ruined some people. And nobody learned from that. They're still printing in China, and it's very volatile, And the recent complaints, people said like, "Oh, we can't do it here because I can't get printing of the same quality, and I can't do this." And yes, you can. It's just if everybody starts doing it in the U.S., yes, there's going to be a rush on it, but eventually it'll level out. But there are people who are printing in-house here for years and still do. So they did fine. They were never affected by all of this stuff. But when you have like these companies that are still masquerading as indie companies, but they're being absorbed by larger companies who don't make anything themselves, but they just sell other people's content. They handle their Kickstarters, other crowdfunding, the distribution, and now they end up with these, $300,000, $1 million campaigns, and all the books are being produced in China. They're making a killing because guess what? That book that was produced in China that you're getting shipped here, it doesn't cost $50, $60, $70, $100 for that book. So what's if you take away all the upfront money, all the costs, Kickstarter cuts or whatever you want to add into it, they're still making a crazy amount of profit. And people tell me, oh, they really don't make that much. Or I was told like one company, it's just a mom and pop or husband and wife team. Like they made $300,000 off this for books that don't cost nearly as much as what they cost to make. So don't tell me they're not making a killing off it. But the problem is that a lot of these people feel like that's their whole career. That they're probably paying themselves $80,000-$100,000 a year as their salary. Which is great if your company justifies that. But if not, what are you really doing? There are people, and who knows this better than Miguel and a lot of other people that we know personally, is that, a lot of people struggle to make a living off this hobby, but there are people who do nothing, make garbage products, and they're making crazy money, because they're being propped up by other entities, other people who dive in and say, oh, we're going to promote this and make this the greatest thing since sliced bread. We're going to take our cut, and that's really what's ruining the hobby. And a lot of things
promoter game.
Yeah, a lot of things that came out as like, oh, indie, look, we're not D&D, look at us, we're fresh, we're new. Now they're just as corporate as everything else. Now you have people in the game, like Exalted Funeral, who are making these games. They don't make them themselves. Other people are making the game, but they're promoting them, and they're making horrible business decisions and pissing off the backers who will probably not back these games again. They're not going to support them anymore because you can't give a game a year late and show up with damaged copies, missing items. That's poor business. And it shouldn't be like that.
I think it's
People
also
who,
important to identify two types of culprits in these sorts of situations that people usually like to ignore. Because, for example, going a bit deeper, in the case of properties, intellectual properties such as Star Wars, the real one to blame is George Lucas. Why did he allow this to happen? You see, why didn't he get someone to respect the property, or rather the fans?
The biggest problem with George Lucas is that George himself is the root of the problem. If you look at George and his interaction with his audience in the prequel era, it tremendously annoyed George that he had fans of the property who might disagree with his choices. And it didn't seem to occur to him. It's like, George, you chose to do merchandising. You chose to do the comic books. You chose to do the toys. You chose to have people write the novels. You chose to build a universe that you didn't fully control. And the minute you develop a fandom, they're going to have opinions. And I don't think he ever really has understood this. To him, Star Wars, the original Star Wars, was kind of he was kind of a nostalgia guy, is how he started.
yeah,
If you look at American Graffiti and Star Wars, these were nostalgia pieces. These were things about him being a boy growing up in Southern California,
yes,
and the kinds of things entertained him then. But for him, ultimately, Disney was an easy choice because he could make a lot of money, and then he
Well,
didn't have to really worry about it anymore.
just real quick, I think prior to that, though, when it was the expanded universe, when there were no movies and people were carrying on his legacy and he was still getting a paycheck, he was fine with other people making all of that content, and they did a good job. To their credit, everybody who was making stuff, Dark Horse, West End Games, the stuff they were making was phenomenal, and he signed off on all of it. And then he decided to dive back in and say, "Oh well, I'm going to continue with what I was doing, and I'm going to erase everything you did and say it doesn't matter. And now I'm going to start my own thing," right? And he made some poor choices, like making Anakin the protagonist, who was clearly going to turn into a villain, and that whole thing, and Jar Jar Binks and stuff like. So he made some poor choices, and then he handed the reins over to Disney. But that was like Mark said, all his mistake. If he had gone with the people who were loving the stuff from when they were kids and were doing it justice, then it would have succeeded. It would have done better. But instead, he ripped that all away and said, "Well, first I'm going to do something and make some money off it, and now I'm going to hand it off to these other people who are going to bury it." So
And the same applies to Warhammer, to Dungeons and Dragons, to any other intellectual property. That mishandling or that
yeah,
disrespect for the people. You don't even need to respect the fictional characters. Just respect the people that enjoyed what you produce. But here's the other type of culprit that sometimes people ignore: the consumer himself. I have seen so many people
Oh
that
yeah,
were fans. I've been a fan of 10, 20 years for whatever, Dungeons and Dragons, Star Wars, etc. And they bring out this woke product or any whatever trash they're bringing out, and they still buy it. And you ask, you said that you
exactly.
didn't like the woke. Why are you buying it? And they're like,
yeah,
oh well, I just want them to produce something. I don't care. I roll the thing and I buy it. And the problem is get it on sale, right? When it's 80% discount or something. But they
yeah.
are the main problem. The main problem are the
Oh
people
yeah,
that are still buying those things. Otherwise, they wouldn't produce it. They wouldn't produce shit because nobody would
Yeah.
buy it.
And it always happens. People will buy everything, and not everybody, but obviously there are always people that will they cannot.
And they don't even play it. They don't even play it.
Yeah, they're
I've
just
heard of so
collecting
many.
it
They buy all the adventure modules for the Woke Dungeons and Dragons, and
and they
they
put it on
play
a
none of
shelf.
those modules.
Yeah,
yeah.
just collector items. Yeah, it's a stupid thing. I never purchased any of that. I haven't watched any Star Wars for a long time. It's dead. Okay, no problem.
No, it lives in your heart, Miguel. It will always live in your heart. That's the real thing.
Well, yeah, there's always that. The old things you can always watch it, and there's no
Uh-huh.
need for sequels, prequels, bequels, prequels, whatever. And the same for AD&D, of course. Why do you need to buy this new edition if you have plenty of stuff that you have purchased over the years? This one is bad. Okay, you can wait for another one. Maybe there will be a sixth or a seventh, and maybe those will be better. But this one, no, this one is a bad one. So just don't buy it. It's easy to them to make that choice. I think. Well, for me, it is.
I
I
think
like the archetypes for the fifth edition, but at the start. But then they started to focus on other things. Like they start to show the image of here are two boyfriend wizards. I'm not joking. They make it clear. They make it here are two boyfriend wizards enjoying the time of their lives or something. And like, okay, what does have anything to do with the mechanics or the setting? Like,
yeah, they turned it into like spring break, wet and wild D&D. That's um or I call it like we make up all these names for it, like dancing queens and discotheques. It's like it's nothing to do with D&D anymore. Just call it something else. If you want to make, have your kobolds playing lutes in the square with these people, prancing around, that's great, that's fine, do that. But don't call it, it doesn't resemble uh the product anymore. Like if you say with Star Wars, which we know got bad too, but if you said like, all right, well, we're not going to have lightsabers anymore, instead they're gonna hit each other with Kansas silly string, and then we're not going to have X-wing fighters and TIE fighters anymore, they're going to
Large
have
purple rubber dildos, whatever it is they
yeah,
hit
Yeah,
themselves
we're
with
gonna
anymore.
ride around in spaceships that look like dildos, sure. And you keep changing it and changing it, and it doesn't resemble anything, and sure you could tell different stories, but within the same setting, with the recognizable elements at least. So, when you strip everything off, it's not that product anymore. It's like buying a Ferrari and then you realize like, hey, there's a Hyundai engine in here, and but they do it in reverse. Like you expect the Ferrari engine, and they slap a pastel green Hyundai frame over it, and then the car breaks down.
they won't call it something else because it won't sell in the same magnitude. They have to
Exactly.
trick people. Just like when they like, hey, we have this Miles Morales, his Spider-Man as well. What? But isn't there just one Spider-Man? No. There's the other Spider-Man. That's the Spider-Man for you. Or
Yeah.
this is Batman, black Batman. Very important. He's Black Batman. Why not make any other superhero with another theme? With another? No, it's not going to sell. They want the IP. They want the Black Batman, Black Superman, Miles Morales. Otherwise, it won't sell.
Yeah.
And that is the fundamental dishonesty at the heart of it, which is that it isn't so much that the truth is nobody wants it. And so the only way they can sell it is if they take what people know, have heard, and trust and wear it like a dead skin suit. They hollow it out
Yeah.
and change it because they're not actually terribly creative people.
No. Well, the Spider-Verse animated movies, like at first I didn't mind them so much, right? And I knew about the character from the comics, okay. But if you notice, the more you examine those movies, they take the main Spider-Man character, like the only one that they really show, and they make him like, all right, he's inept, he's on the outs with his wife, he's paunchy, almost ineffectual, but now they got to bring him in to kind of show the new Spider-Man the ropes, and then they bring in Gwen Stacy, so now they have the female Spider-Man, and there's like a little bit of a romance there, but then I didn't even know this. Apparently, in her room, there's a trans kids poster on her wall and stuff like that. So the messaging is in there covertly, you know, and they just can't leave it alone. Like all right, great, a Spider-Verse, multiple characters who are spider themed. Okay, great, but they don't stop there. They have to tear down the white male character that's always existed, replace
And that's
him
exactly what it is.
replace
It's
him with
about,
alternate
yeah.
Spider-Man who's this, and alternate Spider-Man who's this, and they're all better than him. He sucks. Let's face it. The kid is cooler. The girl's going to be cooler. the character you never heard of was going to be cooler, and there were some nice things to those that I did enjoy. But the more I knew about it, the more I analyzed, I said, holy shit, this is just another dose of the message, but it's aimed at our kids, it's aimed at satisfying the woke element and catering to that, the pandering and stuff like that. And it's everything we watch now. Stranger Things, I was a fan of. That went down into the toilet, because that has
Oh
to
my
be
Lord, that has gone
Jesus.
so
Oh
far
my
south.
God. They just but they bait us. It's nostalgia bait. They lure you in. They say, hey, this is almost like the thing that you liked. You like Goonies? You like Gremlins? Well, here's this movie. It's just like that. And you go, okay. You start watching, you're like, yeah, this is pretty cool. They did nice things with this. Okay, let's see where this goes.
And then they pivot.
Yeah, and then the shoe has to drop, and you go, oh, what the hell, and you want to cancel your subscription, throw your shoe through the TV, whatever you think of at the time, but you feel betrayed because you're like, why couldn't they just leave it alone?
And there's no
Yeah,
narrative
it's-
coherence. Like in the case of
Yeah.
Gwen Stacy, imagine Peter Parker. That was one of the most traumatic moments in his life when Green Goblin, and to a certain extent, Spider-Man himself, he caused the death of Gwen Stacy. And suddenly
Yeah.
he finds Gwen Stacy again. Do you think that wouldn't be a shock to you? That someone
Yeah.
that you loved so much suddenly appears.
They didn't do their
again,
homework. They did zero homework. Everything is like Zack Snyder and some of these people that do the same thing. They find these isolated comic moments that looks, that look pretty, and they go, "Oh, let's use this. Let's use that," and they put it up there for people to see, and the nostalgia people go.
Stupid
Yeah.
question, but when did Gwen Stacy came back? I know she died a long time ago.
She's a new Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Didn't you know she's Ghost Spider? She has spider powers now.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
they have a young
And she
Gwen
didn't
Stacy.
get back in with Peter, despite Peter and Gwen Stacy being the original couple. No, she went with Miles Morales. That's the love interest for Gwen Stacy.
So letting Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So, but that's how they lure you in, Oh, I recognize this scene or this character, and look, it has the official name with the copyright symbol at the end, and I should like this, right? And they replace it, and like Mark says, this is the dead thing, the skin suit that they wear, that they parade around in, and oh, and you must love it, for X, Y, and Z reasons, because if you don't like this that has the black character, you're a bigot. If you don't like the girl boss, then you're a chauvinist. And then you have to explain, like, no, I like strong female characters. I like this character and this character. They don't matter because they weren't made by Gen Z, okay? Boomer, go crawl into your crypt and die. Just give us the money and we'll decide what you like, okay?
Have you seen the recent video game, Marvel Cosmic Invasion?
Oh, most of the Marvel games are horrible.
It's
yeah.
this one. This is return.
No.
This is the return to the original formula. I play it all the time.
Oh, yeah?
Beautiful women with incredible figures, long hair, and the wokesters are losing their minds because that is super
Great.
successful. It is one of the most successful video games at the time of this video because they are giving people what they want. You have like Storm and Phoenix showing the curves, the flowing hair.
Because Sony lost a lot of money because they tried to be heavy-handed with these messaging things in the video games and stuff, and people flipped out. And they had like a whole Bible of what they expected people to follow, making games, to put certain things in. And it's funny because I don't think Sony of Japan had anything to do with it. I think it was just SCEA, a Sony Corporation of America, whatever. It was mostly them saying, "Oh, we have to make it this and that." And again, corporate molding of everything that we're exposed to. So, and maybe it's starting to turn around.
Yeah, and you're not going to believe is. Let me confirm. Marvel Cosmic Invasion. I think it was produced in Canada. Let me see. Canada.
Oh.
.mu. Part of the team was from Canada, so that's a big shocker. Like what? So a game with feminine women, incredible.
But yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there that's they have to insert certain things into, and I guess the money is where money talks and bullshit walks. So if the consumers finally wake up and they say, "Hey, this is not what we want," and they stop buying, they stop spending, you lose that fan base. That's the only time they'll change. And recently it's happened more and more, and they don't like to admit it. But it's gonna bankrupt your company. So you better listen to these people because they don't have to buy your thing, right? They have a choice. They're consumers. They could choose not to consume, right? And it's like that with anything.
Canadian-based studio, yeah. No, I
Okay.
still can't get over the shocker. Like Canada, are you regaining
That is
the
very,
path?
yeah. Canadians doing something based. No, that's very, very, very troubling.
Mhm.
They went insane, or they went
Cuck,
insane.
Canadians.
Yeah, I have to check that out now. Because the last Marvel thing I was playing was the Midnight Suns game, which
Mhm.
wasn't full of messaging, but you have these relationships with the characters, where you try to build their trust, they become better teammates. It almost plays out like a card game as far as the combat goes, because you have to select the characters and they have certain moves, and you watch them play out. But there's definitely like mechanics to it,
Mhm.
where you choose. You're not controlling the characters with a controller. But there's a main storyline to it, and in that storyline, in between the combat, you can interact with these characters in certain scenes. You find certain items that you can give them as gifts, but of course, they give you these weird situations. Like there's an area that's you're in swim trunks, and the female characters might be in a bikini, but there's the opportunity to be in the pool with Tony Stark. And I'm a dude, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to be in the speedo in the pool with Tony Stark to gain his hearts, because to your connection to the other character is hearts. Like, oh, you have a great connection with Ghost Rider now, and that's great, but they make it seem like it's a romantic connection. So in the
Mhm.
beginning, they tried to throw this girl at you who was like the ultra goth emo whatever. She has magic powers. I never heard of her. She's a newer character, and okay, I tried to ignore her for a bit, but I was like Magic from the New Mutants,
Mhm.
so she popped up, and I'm trying to, get her to be my special teammate or whatever. But
Mhm.
then here comes Robbie Reyes, the newer Ghost Rider. Hey, why don't you come in the pool with me? Now get lost, guy. Like I don't go that way. I want to, But they try to like force these things, and a lot of games have that, now, like where you can forge some romantic connection with the character. And at the base level, it's supposed to be like a trust thing where you develop a rapport with another teammate. And okay, I get that, but they definitely do make it seem romantic, because there's things you could give as gifts that you'd only give someone that you had a romantic relationship with, right? You're not going to give your, the best buddy you play softball with and drink beers with. You're not going to give him like a framed, uh, you know, picture
Of
of
puppies.
yeah, a puppy. No, it's not going to happen. Yeah,
They did it much better in Marvel Ultimate Alliance, one of the older games
yeah.
that
I played the
everybody was in the base and you just got close to whatever Black Panther and he would tell you, I remember the time that I fought this villain in blah blah blah. Did you ever fight a similar villain before? And yes, yes, I actually blah blah blah. And so
Yeah,
that was
I
much
like
better.
those. Those are pretty good. The PSP version I played a lot. That was great.
If you
But
like beat 'em ups, Marvel Cosmic Invasion, it is really good, super fun.
oh, so that's like the Ultimate Alliance one.
Yeah, yeah, it's a
More.
bit like the old Final Fight games when the character moves from one side of the screen to the other, beating up punks. But
Oh, side
this in this case,
scroller.
you have
Okay.
like a side scroller, and everybody's playing it, and it's so easy to get a game. You get matched immediately. Super fun.
I used to love Captain America and the Avengers and the X-Men game that they had in the arcades back in the day. Those were great. Where
In
they
my
even
mind,
had like
it's going to be stuck forever. Captain America still needs your help. You know, he still
Yep.
does that in this game. He's constantly like, Captain, I will throw my shield at you. That heroic speech.
Yeah, I love those games.
I
I
think
still have
I
like I
will
could
play that
I,
one. I
yeah.
remember Ultimate Alliance, but none of the others. I
Hmm.
was never much into Marvel video games.
You could say
Do
that
they
this is Ultimate Alliance, but in the side scroller version.
I'd be curious to know what your guys' experiences were with like, arcade games back in the day. Like, what did you have? What did you play? What did you see? Like, were they as big there as they were here, or?
here in Mexico, or where?
I guess
Like
it's
Mexico or
you and me
Portugal, either
probably.
one.
Yeah. In Portugal, not that really. I don't think so. Maybe, well, maybe in Lisbon, possibly, but where I live, no, not really.
In Mexico,
Small,
arcades
small town.
are everywhere. Well, right, not right now, but back a couple of decades back, or even about 10 years ago, you still find like arcade machines, and you were not a true Mexican unless you skipped classes sometimes and you played X-Men, The
Okay.
Simpsons, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, all of them.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, those were all good ones.
Mm.
You must have liked those games because those were very similar. The things you mentioned, because those were like the multiplayer ones,
Mhm.
which I think Gauntlet started that the Gauntlet, which is to me
Uh-huh.
great. Like the first, I guess not the first fantasy game, but the first type of dungeon type game that you saw in the arcade where you're playing that type of character.
It
Um,
was a bit like a beat 'em up, you could say, right? Like a
yeah,
top view beat 'em up. Not exactly in the traditional sense, but you could say that Gauntlet started, well, was one of the pillars. Blue Warrior needs food badly, you know?
yeah. I still have a lot of these games I'll play once in a while, like on an emulator. Because now you could play just about anything you played through your childhood on some type of emulator, whether it's an arcade game, console game, PC game. You could find it and play it on Raspberry Pi machine or PC. It's very simple to do, so it's a lot of fun, especially if you get those old type of setups, like the joysticks, where it's like similar to the original experience.
Hmm. There is currently a revival. There are many
Yeah.
beat 'em up games that are coming out, and people are buying it like hot bread. It is super fun.
The platformers too, which I don't really care for some of them. Like there's a big resurgence of like 8-bit, like low res graphic, uh, like platform type games. Like a Mega Man or like a or a Super Mario or a Castlevania and stuff like that.
Like all those names, Mega Man, Castlevania. It's a flood of memories. Like gave me the memories of some of the happiest and sometimes the
Yeah,
most testing moments of my life. They are so charged
sure.
with nostalgia.
It's interesting. I must have gone in a very different direction when it came to my computer games because I tended to play like graphic adventure games, or games with a similar kind of bent, or CRPGs. So to give you an example, um, I got into the original Lucasfilm World War II flying game. I played that a lot. The Battle of Britain. I got Loom. Loom was a big one for me. Um, I did do King's Quest. It was not the first one, but I would think it was King's Quest 4 was the first one I played. Um, that's tended to be the stuff that I did. I did CRPGs like Fallout and
Mhm.
Baldur's Gate. Um, I didn't do a lot of your classic arcade style games on home PC.
No, I don't think
Now
my
I would
PC
play arcade
could
games
handle it
at
back
the
then.
arc. I would play arcade games at the arcade, and to be honest, that's an experience that it so many people no longer can have, and that's a shame because those times I would go to the arcade, I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. You had all these different machines. They were bright, they were colorful, they had all these little gimmicks. You would have lots of people running around. It felt very active. There was lots of noise. It was fun. Now, as I understand it, that's actually a rare experience. There's just not a lot of dedicated arcades
There-
around.
There's a place not too far from me in New Jersey. They have multiple locations now. It's called Yestercade, and they have all the old machines that they keep in good repair. Like you name the game, and they probably have it. And there's a few types of places like that across the country, so they're worth seeking out. Usually like you pay hourly and you play however much you want, and they'll have pinball games too. Like I love the old Adams Family pinball game and the Raiders of the Lost Ark one, and that I guess they came out in the '90s. Those were great. They had them. Tales from the Crypt, um, but also the really older ones. Like '70s style pinball games. But there's quite a few places around the country that have stuff like that. Um, so it's cool to see. It's like stepping into a time travel machine, and revisiting your youth for a little bit.
I haven't seen an arcade in a long time. I have no idea where there's one
Oh,
here. No idea.
I
Maybe
saw
in
one
some
in Las Vegas like
shopping
15
center.
years back.
yeah. Well, we have like the places that are like boardwalk locations. That have games and stuff like that. They'll usually have arcade games, but they're usually the newer ones. They even have ones now like that. You shoot water at the screen, all kinds of crazy stuff. I was like, oh wow, I would have loved this when I was a kid. But to see like the older, authentic ones, from back in the day, it's worth checking out. Like one of those retro style arcade places.
Yeah, it was a combination, like all of the sounds, all of the colors, the people, even the smells. I remember smelling popcorn and sometimes some weird candy that I could never identify. It's simply something that you cannot recreate in front of your PC or your console.
Yeah. Maybe that's where we can make money. We make like these little like Glade plugins, or aerosol cans, where you spray something that smells like the nostalgia, like arcade or movie theater, or
Theme park, or
theme park.
Yeah, that would probably work.
Or if you want to scare away guests, you have the one that's marked like Taco Bell bathroom, oh, I'm sorry, there's something wrong with my stomach. Yeah.
Well, another thing that we don't have here, Taco Bell.
Yeah.
There's
You're
no
not missing too much, no.
and here in Mexico we have the original tacos.
Yes.
Actually, there's lots of fast food joints that we don't have here. We have McDonald's, and there's Pizza Hut, and I don't know, Domino's. What else?
Wow. I'm surprised Domino's made the cut.
Yeah, a few more, but some of those are just you can find them just somewhere, but not everywhere. So there are a few that there are in some places, but they are not. The ones that you can find anywhere is obviously McDonald's and Pizza Hut. And
Is there a Portugal brand like fast food chain? Like, do they have their own that's known? Portugal?
let me think.
Pizza Portugal.
Not really. No, I mean there was a pizza stuff that was, but I don't think it's. In the 80s and the 90s there were some, but I'm not sure if they survived the last decade. Probably not. The ones who survived are the American ones.
What I really like, at least here in Mexico, is that now people are actually, that is, companies, restaurants are trying to get healthier things out there. Like, for example, here in our HEB, we actually have sourdough bread, like super healthy, not the modified crap. We also have organic pizza, not in HEB, but in other like different local places. We have organic pizza, and just
Wow.
right now, I cannot believe my eyes. I organic milk.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
It's a sign
And
of
I
the
eat a
end.
lot. I eat a lot. I eat like you cannot imagine, and I don't get fat. What really gets you fat is the fucking things they put in the process, the fast food. Go
Yeah.
organic, and wow.
Yeah. It's definitely true.
Well, it's 1:20 here, so I think it's time to wrap it up.
It is time.
So thanks, Abraham, Roger, Mark, and
Thank you.
whoever is still here. I don't know, watching. Probably Bingo Manzero and Mike.
Dr. Flamingo, what was his name?
There was a
Dr. Flamingo.
yeah.
I want to see it as a superhero. That would be awesome.
Mike Necrophant.
So thank you for being here. Thank you for watching, and we'll probably be here again next week. Maybe not this group, but someone else. Okay, bye. Bye, guys.
Good night. Take it
Bye
easy.
Good
bye.
night. Good night.
Good night.